try that again. How's it going out there, folks? Welcome back. Now you guys can see what's going on here across Northern California. It's about 2:53 p.m. California time here. Pretty busy day out in Northern California where we had a 7.0 earthquake here today. Got a lot going on right now with aftershock sequences coming in here to Northern California. A bunch coming into the live seismographs here. In fact, a lot more than what's being reported here across the map, the USGS map here. These guys showing about 56 earthquakes of all magnitudes, but they're not counting all the events that have taken place that have not been accounted for yet. So far, the largest event here was a 7-pointer, pretty decent-sized earthquake. That event shook me up pretty good here across the Chico area here in Northern California. Gave me quite some higher blood pressure out here. A lot of rolling motion from this earthquake that lasted about 20 seconds or so, at least for me anyway. Outside of Chico here, we felt that rolling back and forth motion there for 20 seconds. The original magnitude came in on the early alert system, which is this app right here. Let's go back here and see if I can find that. It's called MyShake. You can download that for your phone. That provides you an early notification system there of an earthquake in your region. It gave me a 20-second leeway of between the time I got that notification to the time I felt shaking here in Northern California. So a useful app, no doubt. It might save you a little time there to get out of the house or maybe find a safe spot. I would recommend everyone download it for sure. It's free. So 7-pointer, latest earthquake here. As far as large-scale activity goes, haven't had a 7-pointer out here since 1994. We've had some upper 6s, but no 7-pointers. This is the first 7-pointer since 1994. Also some larger movement there in Southern California back in 1994. So these guys have not moved yet, but you never know. Could start kicking up down south. We'll definitely have to watch it. But I've noticed this trend here in the last couple days, elevated seismic activity taking place out here in California due to some elevated tremor activity down into the subduction zone of the Cascadia. Feel like I'm doing this again. Actually, it is the second time I'm doing it. I just did an update here on this, and some things were messed up on my end. But there's a tremor activity from yesterday, right? See those dots there? That's not volcanic tremor, but slow slip events there between the two plates downstream into the Cascadia subduction zone. Had about 201 epicenters of tremor yesterday. Now, this is prior activity from today's large event. The day before that here, we had another event. That was actually on the 2nd. This is the day previous, and yesterday's event is actually right here on the 4th. So we've had a number of days here of tremor activity at the southern end of the Cascadia subduction zone. Tremor activity, obviously, and I've said it a bunch, adds further strain upstream here where the locked areas are. Now, by the way, that earthquake struck on the Mendocino boundary here. Well, it's a triple point boundary between the Pacific plate here to the south, the Juan de Fuca plate up here to the north, and the North American plate. That is roughly, well, Cascadia area eastward from this region. So it's a triple point boundary. A lot of stress and strain builds up in that area, and the tremor activity we've seen here in the last couple days has added strain out here across the plate boundary. I believe it's enhanced a lot of potential, including the southern end of the Cascadia subduction zone, where we can see if it ruptures, a partial rupture here would be an 8.4. The full rupture of the Cascadia would be a 9-pointer. And that's been 324 years since we've had a full rupture. Also, what's playing a part here in the tremor activity is movement out here across the Blanco fracture zone. Now, this activity is actually a little older than today's events and yesterday's earthquake activity. In fact, I believe the tremor activity is a result of this movement here in the Blanco fracture zone, adding strain here, right? Kind of pushing the Juan de Fuca plate down, the Gorda plate in this matter, further and further into the subduction zone. Tremor activity over here, adding the strain at the surface levels, and that's when we get these bigger earthquakes. We've seen the elevated activity yesterday following the Tremor events here. These two yellow circles, a couple mixed in here as well prior to today's activity. So we're getting a lot of bouncing back and forth between adjustment here, shallow adjustment, and deeper activity here across the subduction zone. Bouncing back and forth, and today we get hit with that larger 7-pointer. So there's still obviously a little bit of concern that we may see something bigger out here. I haven't seen any migration of any earthquake activity up north along the Cascadia, but it's right there. So we have to be careful and cautious. And a 7.0 compared to an 8.4, well, there's really no difference. A couple numbers, but the energy potential there is way higher. We would have for certainly seen a tsunami produced if that 8.4 struck there today. But right now we just have a 7-pointer off of the Cascadia. That's along the plate boundary here of the southern end of the Gorda plate and the Pacific plate boundary. But we do have a little bit of migration here northward, or I should say eastward and northward a little bit into the Cascadia. So I'm continuing to watch it, folks. There's a number of aftershocks that are coming in back to back. There's been a number of 5-pointers out here as well. They got removed and downgraded. So the largest magnitude so far appears to be this 4.7 a couple minutes following the main event today. During that sequence of events, we had a 5.8 pop up down here across the Cobb Mountain area, a long ways away and off of the plate boundary on a separate fault down here across the Clear Lake volcanic field. Now, that 5.8 got adjusted down to a 4.1. So, I don't think it was a 5.8. I think the seismograph stations were reading it wrong from that series of waves that came in there from the larger quakes. But it did get downgraded from a 5.8 to a 4.1. Man, did I feel this 7-pointer? That was definitely a strong earthquake here. It was felt all over the place, folks. Let me show you guys the shake map here. Like I say, I've been busy nonstop here in the computer room covering this stuff. And been covering this earthquake activity for quite a few years here on YouTube and other social media platforms. But last couple days here, I've been pointing out the need for caution and the awareness out here due to elevated seismic activity out here across the west coast. I'll show you guys that elevated. I showed you a little bit here across the Gorda plate recently, but I'll show you more here in a minute. There's the Did You Feel It maps all the way up to Seattle. It looks like some motion being felt even down to Los Angeles. The majority, though, here across Northern California. Some people felt it, some people didn't. Seen a lot of swimming pools up here outside of Chico, sloshing water back and forth. That's kind of what it felt like here in my house, like a back and forth wave motion. And goodness, it lasted for a good 20 seconds. And then I felt another one a little bit later while I was doing the live update. About that time, a 5-pointer came in somewhere over here, but they removed it. And I could have swore I felt a secondary larger earthquake. It wasn't that 4.7. It was a few minutes, maybe like 20 minutes following this event out here. Even someone in Yuba City mentioned that they felt another shaker going on. So it's possible we could get more earthquakes added here onto the map after they review the earthquakes out here that's coming in. I guarantee you can take this number right here and multiply it by 3. And you probably have easily 200 or 300 earthquakes out here that has taken place. They just haven't got to them all. There's so many coming in all at once. We see it on the seismograph stations here. There's a little quake. Remember, the bigger ones are going to flatline the seismograph stations here, but there's the recent activity. I believe that's going to be the 3.8 here a few minutes ago. Gotten a number of 2s, upper 2s since then. But at least they're adding the 2s onto here now, onto the earthquake catalog. Before they weren't. They were only reporting 3.1 and above. So things may be slowing down a little bit to where they can catch up and report on some of these earthquakes. There's a couple of those 2s. And yeah, this is definitely a continuing event. A lot of earthquake activity stirring up here across Northern California. Now, they put out a little generic earthquake forecast, aftershock forecast, I should say. And it's really doesn't show anything I wouldn't expect from the USGS out here. It's for this area, specifically this area, they're saying less than a 1% chance for 7.0. 6.0 is actually pretty minimal as well, with a 7% chance. M5 or above 53, or M5 53%. M4 99% chance. M3 up there as well. I say there's probably a higher chance going on here because anything around a major subduction zone, even though we're seeing this activity south here, it's in a very dynamic position area in terms of plate stress, subduction, strike slip boundaries, you name it. Very dynamic, stressful area. And who knows what it may trigger. The Cascadia subduction zone partial rupture can take place more often than a full rupture. So just got to watch this. I'm not saying that something's going to happen, but I like to keep an eye on things. I was watching it yesterday. There was elevated seismic activity. So if you cross this out here, cross out today's activity, I'll point out the areas that we've seen elevated here yesterday and the day before. So counting the tremor activity, remember the tremor underneath Northern California? That's a sign that this plate's getting pushed underneath the subduction zone. So that's adding strain backstream. We had these series of earthquakes here, bouncing back and forth of today's activity. Inland activity, this is still unverified here across the Trinity Mountains outside of Redding. I believe some of these are phantom earthquakes, just earthquakes that have been picked up by seismograph stations that have not been verified yet. But yesterday we had a three-pointer underneath this area, underneath the Glenn County area outside of Willows, and also a 2.7 prior to that. We've seen a swarm of movement up here across the Sierra Nevada mountains. A lot of elevated seismic uptick here all across the West Coast. And it's still there. But right now the main focus is up here across Northern California. But it was a broad-scale event. A lot of little microquakes all over the place. But even without, let's say if you take out the microquakes here, get rid of today's events, we had all these, a couple fours, a couple twos, some movement in Nevada, inland activity showing elevated movement. It was a day of elevated activity yesterday. Last night when I was doing the update, I was like, man, something's stirring up out here. I thought for certain that we'd either see an earthquake out here across California or something larger out across the western Pacific. Those deeper quakes underneath the Sea of Osk indicating strain out here against the Kuril-Kamchatka. And then we had elevated activity here in California. So it's like, take your pick. Which one is it going to be? And sure enough, California is the one that it went with. Just a lot going on here, folks. I'm curious to see what the tremor activity is going to look like later tonight. Not for sure what's going on with these seismograph stations, though. I hope they stay online because that's our way of knowing how many earthquakes are happening out there, if it's continuous or if it's only a couple like these guys are saying. One thing I could say, though, at least they're adding some twos out here on the map because it's pretty important. Whether it's a 2.9 or a 3.1, there's still earthquakes that are taking place out here. And if we're getting hundreds and hundreds of earthquakes in a short amount of time, who's to say that we're not looking at something bigger happening? You guys remember the 2019 July 4th, July 5th sequence of events down here? We had that 6.9 Ridgecrest area. A lot of earthquakes popping up, and it kept coming. And then the next day on July 5th, we had the 7.1. So on any type of scenario where we're seeing continuous aftershock activity increasing in multitude of magnitudes, there's obviously, common sense tells us, a chance of a bigger earthquake. So that's why I wish they reported all of them that were going on out here. But that's why I like to keep seismograph stations online. I hope they come back because that looks a little suspicious that they go off when I start talking about them. So we'll continue to keep an eye on that. No major adjustment around the globe yet. Right now the focus here is on Northern California. And appreciate it if you guys let me know where you're at, what it felt like. That's some high scientific, valuable data right there. for me, and it sounds like a lot of other folks too, that this was just a rolling or a wave type motion here, back and forth. To me, I could feel it north to south, and it lasted 20 seconds. I was literally ready for it to be over. It was making me a little nervous. I thought we were going to see some major. I thought the big one hit. I thought it was a 9-pointer out along the Cascadia. Because when I got this early alert system in, I thought, man, there's no way that could. I'd be able to feel some shaking from a 6-pointer, a couple hundred miles away from me. But when the waves came in, I knew it was way bigger than the 6-pointer. But that earthquake alert system, it's good to have. Definitely, it's free. All you got to do is add the location preferences here, so they can not track you, but they can access your location. Like, say if you're in Los Angeles somewhere and there's an earthquake nearby, they got your location programmed. They can send it out to your cell phone, and you get an early alert notification from that MyShake alert. Definitely download it, folks. It's well worth it. I have it on my phone, and like I say, it gave me a 20-second window before I felt the scary waves coming on. The report to 2.4 now. That's just so weird that they would go offline like that, guys. All of them. All the seismograph stations went offline. Hopefully they come back. So just be on guard. There's a lot going on out here, and way more than what's shown up here on the map. The magnitudes are getting downgraded quite drastically. That's a little worrisome as well. We've seen a number of 5s and 4-pointers out here, upper 4s, that got downgraded a tremendous amount out here. So I have no way of specifically knowing if the downgrades are warranted or not. That's why I appreciate if anyone's out here around the Eureka, Arcata area, along the Coast Range, let me know how many earthquakes they may have felt today. And, of course, the big one, the 7-pointer, what did it feel like? Was it a jolt? Was it a violent shaking? Let us know here in the comments below in this video or in the live stream. Definitely appreciate the valuable information. So I see what they've done here. It looks like they've delayed the data reporting here. Current time should be right about here. So the data's coming in, but there's probably about a 10-minute delay in me actually accessing the data. But there's still quite a bit of earthquake activity coming in to the region. I'd prefer the Petrolia station, as that is closer to some of the earthquake activity. But Dinsmore here, that's picking up some of the activity as well. So hopefully that comes back. Anyway, folks, continuing to cover this and watch it. I'll be off here on the side, kind of keeping an eye on things. Look at that 3.5 right on the plate boundary there of the Cascadia. Be on guard. I'll be back out here a little bit later on this evening. Well, I'll be off and on here on the live stream covering this, but wanted to do a quick video update here for the channel. We'll be back here in just a few minutes, folks. Sit tight.